Welcome everyone to our NOSA monthly webinar. I'm so glad that you could join us, whether live here or in the recording. And these times of us gathering every first Thursday of the month are special to me because, Connie and I really get to share and invest our heart into you. And I hope that these have been impactful for you, and that if you've missed one, that you go back and you check them out on our website at nosafoundation.com on our resources tab. They're all there. You can also find them on YouTube by subscribing to our YouTube channel, because they're just so full of a lot of practical tools of how to navigate through the challenges of life in a more seamless way. So we'd love to see more of you here in person live, because we have live Q&A times and discussion times, and it's really great to just share in a smaller, more intimate setting just the things that are going on in our lives. So we love to see you out. If you can, join us the first Thursday of every month. And yeah, so tonight we're going to be talking about a time of reflection. And this is important. And, usually we talk about this in January because we start thinking about, how our previous year was and what we want our new year to look like. But Connie and I felt really this year that, to have this conversation here in the month of November, especially surrounding the time of Remembrance Day. And a lot of times we associate that with, remembering the sacrifice that the veterans had in our life. And that is extremely important. And it's, it sets the tone for a time of reflection. But we also have to reflect on other areas of our life. And so I'm so excited to have Connie sharing her heart with us today about what reflection looks like for her and how she's implemented it in her life, and how we can develop skills in our life to really take hold of this concept and use it for our benefit. So Connie, take it away.
Thanks, Laura. I just want to start by just expressing why this is so important to me. I think so many times we get so busy with the day in and day out stuff of life that we forget to reflect. And in those times of reflection is the time that we actually can see things a little bit clearer when we actually stop to look. And so the first thing that I wanted to share tonight is actually a scripture from Proverbs 4, verse 23. And it says, "Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of life." And part of reflecting is guarding our hearts, because when we have the chance to look back and see clearly what's been happening, then we know how we can protect our hearts. We know how we can do that moving forward, especially if something that year or in that transition period has affected us in a negative way, then we can make steps to make sure that doesn't happen again. And it really does determine our steps from that point forward. It determines our path. And so this verse is like such a great place for us to start tonight. And so this is the definition of reflection: serious thought and consideration. And obviously, when you're like looking back over your life, you're taking the time and you are considering things and you're giving it serious thought. And you can't do that when you're still busy. You can't do that when you're still active. This is something you actually have to stop to do. And I think it's just important to recognize that it's not something you can do while you're still rushing through life. I love this quote. It's unknown, but who the author is, but it's looking back so the view looking forward is even clearer. And this picture just spoke so much to me about that. Like, when you have a rearview mirror in a car, you need to know where you came from so you have a better idea where you're going. Hazards coming up behind you, you can see coming. But if you never look back, you never know. And I think if we think about that, like, when we're learning how to drive, that's one of the things they drill into you. Like you have to be constantly every 10 seconds looking into those mirrors, right? You need to know what's going on behind you as much as you need to know as what's going on in front of you, right? But at the same time, you don't want to take your eyes totally off the road. Otherwise, you're going to smash into something in front of you. So you have to balance it, right? And those are glances back. You're not like spending a minute looking behind you. They're glances. And that's what I want to kind of focus on tonight is what are those glances looking like? So in light of that, there's like 3 ways that you can really reflect with that concept in mind, right? You can either keep your eyes glued to that mirror and focus solely on that, which we've just determined when you're driving is unsafe. Or you can be that person that never looks back, right? Who cares what's going on behind me? It doesn't bother me. As long as ahead of me, doesn't. Well, if an emergency vehicle is coming up behind you or something else is happening behind you, it might be worth knowing that it's coming. And then there's the third option of glancing back. And when you glance back, like I said, you're just doing it for seconds at a time. You're not spending all your time doing that. And it's valuable to you because it changes the way that you drive. If you see someone speeding up behind you, you're going to alter what you're doing in light of that. If you see dangerous things happening behind you that can affect you, you will adjust your driving. And the same is true with life. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So if your eyes are glued to the past, then we're going to go back to the rear view mirror thing and emphasize that a little bit more. The only safe thing to do if your eyes are glued to the past is to pull over and stop, right? You don't keep driving because you could smash into something. So if you pull over and stop, what does that mean? It means you're stuck, right? So in life, if our eyes are glued to the past, it means that we're so focused on the events of the past that we can't let them, we can't really experience the present. And we don't appreciate each moment that we get to experience in this moment because we're so caught up in the past. We don't have the motivation to go forward. If all you're doing is looking in that mirror, like in this case, you can see how it's dark in front of you. It's not all that appealing, but behind this person is a beautiful sunset and a church. And it's such a beautiful picture that I think sometimes we look back at our past and we almost glorify it. We almost make it better than it is, right? I think about in the Bible when the Egyptians were set free, or not the Egyptians, the Jewish people were set free from Egypt. What did they do? They longed for the days when they were in Egypt because things were like in their minds easier. But when they were there, they were miserable. And this is the thing they forgot. And so when we're looking back, we have to be truly honest with where we were. And honesty is a huge piece to this picture. Because if we just make it look prettier than it is, we're missing out on things and we're not motivated to move forward. And once we're stuck, it's really hard to break free. It's not impossible, but it's really hard. Because if you'd rather be where you used to be, you're going to be constantly wondering what you did wrong to get where you are. You'll be constantly stuck there. And it's not a healthy place to be. So now we're going to talk about the never looking back. So these are the drivers that could care less what's going on behind them. And they're just going to go on their way. And they miss important things that are happening right behind them. Like I was saying, emergency vehicles, someone speeding up behind you. What if you're on the highway and there's like a big rig coming up behind you and it can't stop and it's flashing its lights at you? That's kind of an important thing to know is happening behind you. What if there's an avalanche? What if there's all sorts of things that could be happening behind you. And if you're not looking for those things, you can't alter your direction while you're driving to adjust for that. Likewise in life, right? If we don't look at our past mistakes and learn from them, then going forward, we're continuing making those mistakes. We're going to continue to make those same missteps, and we're not going to correct it because we don't know we're in the wrong path. We don't recognize that this is actually doing us harm. We just keep going. And an example of this from my own life is when I was younger, I just kept going on my path, doing different jobs, doing whatever jobs came in my path. And I knew I had this calling on my life that was much bigger than the jobs I was going for. But I just didn't see the mistake I was making in not pursuing the dream that God put on my heart. I just thought, this is life. I missed my chance. I'm going to keep going down this road. And I don't regret it because I learned a lot, but I think about how much further I could be into the dream that God had given me if I had just taken the time to reflect back then, make the necessary changes, and walk into my destiny sooner. And it would be mind-blowing where I could be today. And I don't, like I said, I don't regret it, but I look back and it causes me food for thought, right? And so I want to encourage you, reflect, because those past mistakes, those past things that are taking us off track are those things that we could course correct and fix. And we also want to look for our successes. Where were we successful? Where did we move forward? Because those things can keep us on the right path, right? Those things can keep us on the right road. If you missing past mistakes, then you're prone to repeat them, like I said. And if you miss your successes, it's possible that you'll take a different route and leave the success behind. Not sure how you achieved it to begin with. And I don't know if you've had these experiences, but I have, where I was like, oh, I did that so well, but now I can't seem to do it again. And it's because I didn't take the time to reflect how I got there or what I did. It's really important. Without reflection, and I love this quote, without reflection, we go blindly on our way, creating more unintended consequences, failing to achieve anything useful. By Margaret J. Wheatley. And it's so true. Like, when we just blindly go on our way, we have no idea the consequences we're setting for ourselves because we're not willing to take a look at how we got to where we are. And I find that those are the times where I'm like stuck in loops, right? And it's a different type of stuck, right? The other kind is like you're stuck and not moving. This is like you're stuck and going in circles, right? Not knowing where you came from or where you're going. So when we glance back, that's exactly how we're taught to drive, right? We're taught that we're supposed to glance back in the rearview mirror, not looking back for long periods of time or stopping from looking back at all. No, we're supposed to keep going. We're supposed to keep doing that every 10 seconds. Now, obviously in life, we're not going to look back every 10 seconds, but there are some key points of time where it's smart, like transition points in your life. If you're about to get married or big transitions in your life, you want to reflect on what's good, what's bad, what to take forward, what to leave behind. You're going to hear me say that phrase a lot tonight. And that's because I want you to like really get it into your heart. So in life, when we glance back, it's for a purpose, just like you do when you're driving. It's for a purpose. It's so you know what's going on around you. But in life, it's so that we can evaluate what has gone well and what has not, and course correct accordingly. For the things that went well, we can keep those strategies going forward, or stay on those paths, or implement those things even to a greater degree in the future. Because if something's working, why not take it to the next level? And for things that didn't serve us well, like I said, you can either make course corrections, or if you find that it has no redeemable things at all, just leave it behind. And I think that one's hard, right? Because when we've course corrected several times and we think that there's got to be a way to figure this thing out, sometimes it's just meant to be left behind. And I think about this in like some of my friendships, right? Where no matter what I tried with certain people, it just was not working. And I had to come to a place where I was like, no matter what I try, this is not a relationship that I can hold on to, because this is not a healthy relationship. So there are going to be times where you do have to come to that place where no matter how much course correcting you do, you may need to let that thing go, or that idea, or that person, if it's just there's no way of breaking through that. And sometimes that takes discernment. So if you're unsure, pray about it. God will lead you. God will guide you. He has with me. And this kind of sums up what we're going to be talking about. There's self-reflection entails asking yourself questions about your values, assessing your strengths and your failures, thinking about your perceptions and interactions with others, and imagining where you want your life in the future. And so many times we miss this part of reflection, right? Like we're like looking at just, the big things. Sometimes we miss the little things. And this is even like talking about your perceptions. And I think that's one thing that we really overlook as people, because we interpret our perceptions as our world. We don't necessarily look at them as perception. But this is where the honesty part comes in, right? You have to really be honest with yourself. What is your perception, and what's truly going on? And being able to decipher both is an important thing to work on. And it takes practice. So don't get upset with yourself if you're not there. This takes practice. I'm not perfect at it either. There's a lot of times when I think some of the things that I've perceived are true until I'm found, until it's proven otherwise. And then I'm upset with myself, actually, because I'm like, I could have just realized that was a perception if I'd taken some time of real true, really looking at what's true. Other types of reflection that we can exercise, which are in line with what I just read to you, are things taught to us by God. And these are some things that are really helpful to reflect on. And I think sometimes when we learn things, even if we're taking notes on a Sunday, we'll be like, oh, that's awesome. And then we'll go away from it and we'll forget, right? And we're not intending to forget. But, sometimes it's nice just reflecting on your journal and reflecting on those church notes and realizing, oh, right, he did say that. And now what I wanted to actually implement into my life. So it's good to reflect on those things. And there's a scripture that I want to share with you. But don't just listen to God's word. You must also do what it says. Otherwise, you're only fooling yourselves. For if you listen to the word and don't obey, it's like glancing at your face in a mirror. You see yourself, walk away, and forget what you look like. But if you look carefully into the perfect law that sets you free, And if you do what it says and don't forget what you heard, then God will bless you for doing it. James 1:22-25. And this is why we need to reflect, because it gives us that opportunity to go, yeah, I did learn that. Now I can actually implement it because I forgot, right? That it's a beautiful picture that we can always go back and implement things that we've missed. 2, things that we learned from others. We learn things from other people all the time. There are a lot of good things that we learn from people that sometimes we should implement, and sometimes it takes longer than others. And one of these things is something that Laura actually was going through recently, and she challenged me on. And I actually learned a lot from reading the book that she read. But if we don't take the time to learn from others and reflect on what they've told us, then we don't know that we could actually take steps in that same direction. And that whole process has changed like my relationship with my husband dramatically. And so like those things are important. So don't dismiss that. Things we believe about ourselves. So once again, this is like in the area of perception, right? What we believe about ourselves. And that includes those limiting beliefs. And something I've been challenged in recently is waking up in the morning and writing down limiting beliefs. And what is the combatant to that, right? What is the truth? Because those limiting beliefs are not true. So what is the truth to combat that? And so as I've been doing this, I find that I've been stronger and stronger. And so it's good to reflect on whether those things are true, right? And if they're not, then embracing the truth. Our thoughts and actions. Our thoughts drive our actions. So keeping that in mind, what are you thinking about? Reflecting on what you think about and how you've acted in situations can alert you to if there's something that you need to adjust in your life, if there's something that needs healing, if there's something that you need to move into a different place in. So it's good to reflect on those things as well. Psalm 139:23-24 says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you and lead me in the way of along the path of everlasting life." And if you don't know if your thoughts or your actions have been taking you in a negative path, ask God to search you. That's what this verse says, right? He knows our heart better than we do. So if we ask him, he will show us, right? He is the God of love, not fear. So he will help us with those anxious thoughts. He will help us with those fear thoughts. He will help us with our anger and our frustration. We just need to reflect on that and let him help us. Another one is our values. Reflecting on our values will make sure we're taking the correct path going forward. If we don't reflect on our values, we can get really far off course. And it may be a while before you realize you're that far off course if you're not reflecting on those values. And if you don't know what your values are, then take some time and figure out what they are. What is important to you? Because knowing those things will help you guide your way. It's almost like a rudder on a boat, right? Your values help you steer that boat where it needs to go. And the last one is our interactions with others. So if you're frustrated at the way you spoke to someone, then there's something that you can course correct. There's something that you can do. If you're like, wow, I can't believe I was able to help that person. That's amazing. Maybe I could help another person that's dealing with this. It can inspire you to move forward. So reflecting on our interactions with others can propel us forward as well. And one thing that you should always ask yourself are these things a true reflection of me? Because if they're not, then there's a chance that there's some woundedness that needs to be healed. There's a chance that there's something there, that some trauma that needs to be dealt with, or maybe some sin that needs to be repented. There's something there that's causing that, because that's not who you are truly at your heart. And you know when you're acting or responding in a way that's not truly who you are, because it makes you almost grieve when you do. And that's our conscience speaking, telling us that something's off, something's not good, something needs correcting. So Lawrence Bossidy says, self-awareness gives you capacity to learn from your mistakes as well as your successes. And a lot of us want to learn from our successes. A lot of us want to keep piling on those, but not a lot of us want to take the time to examine our mistakes and how we got there. Because a lot of us want to just leave those behind, but it's important to reflect on those too. Because like I said, that's the only way to course correct. And that's the only way to go forward with those things. Lamentations 3:40 says, instead, let us test and examine our ways. Let us turn back to the Lord. And if anything is drawing us away from God, it is our opportunity to go turn back and look to the Lord. And we can tell which things are pulling us away. And that's a part of the reflection piece as well. Wow, I was zoomed right through this. Have I been talking too fast? Anyway, we're at the activation. Oh, man. And so in this activation, we're just going to actually take a time of reflection. And I want you to think back over the past year. And like Laura was saying at the beginning, like as we're approaching Remembrance Day, we're already in this season of remembering. And it's very important this time of year, like remembering what people have done for us to give us our freedom. But it's great to also realize that this could also be a time where we reflect on our last year so that we can make changes going into the future year. And we have the time to figure out those strategies of things that we're either going to leave behind or course correct, and things that we want to carry forward and maybe even put on overdrive, maybe. So I want you to think about the things that haven't served you well this year. And is there a way that you can course correct? Or is this something that you need to let go of? Like I had to with that relationship. And then I want you to make a plan on how you would either course correct or let it go. And I want you to just think about one thing, because obviously in 5 minutes, you can't do everything from the past year. So the first thing that pops up in your mind, and if it's something that was actually a success or breakthrough, then you can move to the second part. What thing has given you success or brought you breakthrough? And how can you continue that forward into the new year and maintain it going forward? And make a plan, even if it's just a couple of steps of how you'll do that over the next few weeks to make sure that that keeps going. And then you can actually create little reminders for yourself going forward and put them in places where you can see them regularly. And that way you can ensure that your reflection time is useful. You know, it's not just a time where you've remembered these things, but then didn't make a plan to carry them forward. So 3 keys to remember is when reflecting, only glance back. Don't remain there, and don't forget to spend some time in reflection each year or for any major transition in life. Number 2, reflecting on your values, thoughts, and actions can ensure that you're walking the path you want to. And 3, when reflecting, hold on to the things that are working, and for the things that aren't, either course correct or let it go. And then just the reminder of be honest with yourself as you reflect. And this verse kind of hits that home. Because of the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each of you this warning. Don't think that you're better than you really are. Be honest with your evaluation of yourselves, measuring yourselves by the faith God has given us. And that's from Romans 12, verse 3. And like Laura was saying earlier, our next webinar is called Permission to Rest. And we'll be talking about rest and sabbatical rest and why it's important, and even the ability to give yourself permission to rest. Because I think in our day, it's almost like we are rewarded for being busy. And so when we're not, we feel like we're failing. And giving ourselves that permission to rest and take that time that we need to is important. And that's something that I think we really need to recognize, is it's okay to give ourselves permission to rest. So that's going to be next month's webinar on December 7th, and we hope to see you guys there. And if anybody is needing supports of any kind, or if you have anything that has come up that you want to discuss with us one-on-one, or if you know of somebody who has something going on, either with mental health or with trauma, or even some just inner healing work, or even if they just need someone to talk to about those things, feel free to recommend that they book a mentoring session and we can talk to them about that further. And both me and Laura are available on there as our schedule permits. Because we'll be on sabbatical, our schedule will be limited in December. So just be aware of that ahead of time. And then, as you all know, me and Laura do a podcast, and it's called NOSA Unleashed. And you get to hear a more conversational view of the things that we talk about here, and sometimes even other topics that come to mind or come to our heart as we share our stories.